Good morning, Matt Bisogno here from ggs.co.uk, and I thought today I'd do a quick whiz through of a few things, a little aid memoir, if you like, a reminder of a few of the things that you can do on GGs to shortcut your thinking, your form study, and some of the processes that I adopt almost unconsciously now in my daily preview of the races before deciding what I'm going to bet. So let's get straight to the race cards page. As you can see, there's a lot of racing today, and I'm going to show you how I pare this down to a much more manageable chunk of races. Okay, let's crack on. So let's head over to the race cards page, and I'm going to make this as big as I sensibly can, maybe that big. Okay, I'll put my head down there. Okay, and if I click the plus button here, you'll see all of the races today. I counted them. There are 52, more easily countable in this format, so there's 6 to there, and there are 8 fixtures, 6 8s are 48, 49, 50, 51, 52. That's a lot of races, and I mean even if you had 24 hours a day to look solely at the racing, you'd probably still struggle to get through those in any meaningful way. So here's what I do. Over in the top right hand corner here, you see there's some little text buttons. If you click the show filters, you'll get some options here. Now, how you use these options is going to be precisely and entirely down to how you bet the races. In my case, and in this example, I'll probably have a look at some of the jump racing today. I'm quite a fan of secret fan, I suppose, of summer jump racing. I love all racing, and so I'll be looking at more of these races later. But for the purposes of this video, which I'm going to try and keep short, I'm going to lose the National Hunt races. I'm going to lose non-handicap races, and I want only up to class 4 and races up to a mile, let's say. Right, now I've got a much more manageable 2, 3, 6 races. Let's go back to by meeting. And when I look at these races now, I can see that it's a 4-year-old plus mile or thereabouts handicap at Chester. Interesting. There are 4 races at Ascot. 3 of them are 3-year-old handicaps. 3-year-old handicaps early in the season are too difficult for me. I for whatever reason, I've never really been able to get a toehold in those, so I'm going to ignore those. So I've really only got 1 race at Ascot that I'm interested in. There's nothing wrong with 3-year-old handicaps, by the way. Lots of people love them, and you know, have good approaches, but not me. So, and then there's this race here, which is a 4-year-old plus race at Ripon. Now, here's a way to put your shortlisted races front and center. So if I click this little star here, and that star appears regardless of the view you're looking at. So let's look at the by time view. I'm just going to click the star for the 4-year-old plus races. So there's that. Now you can see I've got this my races section here. So this is a 4-year-old plus race, and then this 7:30 at Ripon is also a 4-year-old plus race. Right, so I've got 3 races here, so I can actually reset the filters now and go ahead and hide them. And I can sort by meeting, close them all up again, and then I've just got my races at the top here. And very helpfully, they also appear at the top of the race card drop down. So these are the 3 races I'm interested in, and let's take a look at them. First one is a 14 runner, nearly a mile handicap at Chester. Let's go take a look. Okay, so let me get rid of my mug if I can. Pretty much out of the way anyway. Right, so we can see, what can we see on the screen here? Well, we've got obviously the silks and the recent form and the draw, and a bunch of icons which you can find out more about in the user guide. We've got some green and red numbers by the trainers and jockeys, and they are form indicators. So green is a good form indicator and red is a not so good form indicator. These are based around win and place data rather than PRB or anything, which might be worth looking at. Might be more material. And then we've got various ratings on the right hand side and an odds column. Importantly, just above the race card, we've got a bunch of views of the data. So let's start with the pace tab. So if I click on the pace tab, you can see that I've got at the top here some coloured blobs. This is quite a binary situation. We've got 2 green and 2 red, no amber, so it's somewhat unambiguous, suggesting that horses in the front half of the field have fared better than horses in the latter half of the field in the early go. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and I'm actually going to add a new feature soon. I'm going to add another option on this bar here to look at all races in our database, so going back to 2009 or just the last 5 years, because draw and pace biases, trends, patterns, they do change over time. Things happen. So for instance, in on Chester's Rudy racecourse, which you probably know is a very tight oval, they introduced a cutaway at the top of the home straight about 4 or 5 years ago, and that cutaway makes quite a difference to the outcome of races. Essentially, in the old days, there was no, if you were behind horses turning into the home straight, you had to fan wide to get a run, and often there were lots of hard luck stories. Now, there are still hard luck stories at Chester because it's such a tight track, but the cutaway means you can, if you're in behind the leaders, you can go left or right once that cutaway opens up, and there's just much more road on which to make your final run. So it still favours front end speed, it still favours probably a low draw, all other things being equal. But as I'd like to show you, that advantage has been much diminished. So let's have a look at that now. Okay, so I've moved over to a tool, the Draw Analyzer, and this is a tool that I used extensively to create the flat track almanac. What I want to do is I'm going to put, I've set this up with a mile. That's the 7 furlong, 127 yards. So it's 7 and more than half a furlong. So we call it a mile. I've got actual draw, which accounts for non-runners. I've gone good to firm to good, 12 to 16 runners, handicap, and the entirety of our database going back to 2009. And you can see that historically, well, I suppose what you would say would be that high was a little bit unfavoured, low and middle somewhat similar. And if we look at the percentage of rivals beaten figures, then you can see that low has had the best of it in the full data set, and middle has nearly performed as expected. 0.5 would be what you'd expect, so you beat half, you lose to half. And high has had a little bit to do. So that's the full data set. If I go from 2009 to 2019, you can see that it slightly accentuates it more towards low and away from high. And then if I look at 2020 to 2025, which is roughly when they added the cutaway, you can see that it still favours high. It still favours low on percentage of rivals beaten terms, but it's pretty even. And if you look at the places, there's only been 5 races, but the 15 places have been evenly distributed between the draw thirds. And in actual fact, high has accounted for 3 of the 5 winners. Now that's just a statistical anomaly. It doesn't really mean anything. This is still the most meaningful statistic when you're looking at small draw samples. So, I mean, essentially what we're saying here is that there probably isn't much of a draw bias anymore, certainly over a mile on quick ground in big fields. And if we go down to the heat map, which has got the run styles on it as well, you can see that it's difficult, really quite difficult to win from a held up position. But apart from that, kind of anywhere in the front half and maybe even going to midfield isn't, it's a small inconvenience, but it can certainly be overcome. So at this distance, I think they've done a good job of mitigating or at least evening the playing field, let's say. Okay, let's get back to our race. So that does change things ever so slightly in terms of what we're looking at here with the heat map, the run style heat map. So we can see that what I've got here, I've got the average of the last 3 runs. If I just put it on data for a second, because I think that's quite helpful to see. We've got a horse here, Tarkan, that's having its first run in the UK or Ireland, so we don't really know about that horse. But ignoring that, we can see that Gorak is a horse that tends to lead. Let's just get that on there. Led narrowly, raced in second, led. So this is a horse that we expect to be probably, given its draw, on or very close to the lead. Yanefa here in 5, drawn inside it, has led in 2 of its last 4 starts. And we can see that further out, we've got hardcore front rankers in Transcending Glory and Partisan Hero, both of which have led in all 4 of their most recent 4 runs. So we obviously expect those to go forward as well. In this case, you can see we've got a U, and that's because we were unable to score the comment. Took keen hold, raced wide early, headway and pressed leader over a furlong out. So that comment doesn't tell us where the horse raced in the early part of that race. So that's why we've got a U there. Okay, so let's go back to the heat map, and we can see these 2 horses that we know are probably going to press forward, particularly because they've got a wide draw, so that if they can get to the front, then they've got a chance of controlling the pace. The problem they have, apart from their wide draw, is each other. So this one wants to lead, this one wants to lead. Only one of them can lead. Both will try, I presume, and they are further inconvenienced by the fact that this guy here has an easier run to the rail because he's drawn 5 or 6 stalls inside the other guys. So we can start to visualize how the run from the gate will transpire. Now, obviously, horses miss the break. It's an imperfect science at the best of times. Otherwise, we'd all be millionaires. But I think we can be reasonably confident that at least 2 and probably all 3 of these lads will try to go to the front, and that the pace in the race is going to be pretty quick as a consequence. That's good news if you like a horse like Divine Libra, who, in spite of excellent connections, has a tough draw allied to his run style. So we think he's going to be held up, dropped in, which is a Ryan speciality, and he's going to be ridden for luck. So this horse might be the best horse in the race, but he's going to need to thread a passage through, because these horses here are all going to concertina onto the rail. So we might have 3 in the lead, we might have another 3 behind, and we might have another 3 behind that. So this guy's going to have a difficult transit to win. Obviously he can win, any horse can win, but I think it's going to be hard for this guy to get the run he needs. The one thing he's got in his favour is that they probably will go quick because of these three, and potentially Yannifer, who we saw has led in a couple of his last 4 races. So if we put it on the last 4, you can see he moves forward a bit. The horse that's most interesting, purely from a draw and run style perspective, is probably Too Tempting. He happens to be the favourite. He's going to get first run. And in the old days, the good old bad old days, you might, if you were here and you didn't have the early speed to be here, you might have a problem getting stuck behind these guys. But now there's that cutaway in the home straight. Actually, I'm not sure they've got the cutaway today. I think they might be running without the cutaway. So again, that might be interesting in terms of his case, because with the cutaway, he'd get a run. He'd have daylight in front of him. If he was good enough, he'd be able to go into that. But the way that the rail is today, I just need to double check that after I've recorded this. He might get stuck in a bit of traffic. He still figures to get the best trip around anyway, and a lot of these other horses will be scrambling for a run most likely. So that's draw and pace. I think it's really important consideration in a race like this, and you can see, kind of you can infer quite a lot from this grid. It's not perfect, as I've said, but it's probably not going to transpire hugely differently from how I've outlined there. Okay, so if we have a quick look at Instant Expert, and I've sorted Instant Expert here by draw, so you can see Too Tempting, the 1 stall is there. Divine Libra, the 11 is here, and these 2 fast horses outside are here. We can see that there's lots of track form here, lots of horses that have placed in the last 2 years at Chester. So kind of horses like Pearl Eye, whose run style is more patient. You can see every time he's run here, he's been held up, and he was held up from stall 12 and still was only beaten a small margin. He was out of the frame that day, but it was a good run. That was a couple of days ago. Previously, he obviously stays further than this. He's run over a mile on soft ground, was only beaten a neck. Again, his run style means he's going to be closing fast and late, and he may run out of road. But he's an interesting horse, and his form at a mile, as you can see, is 9 out of 15. He's got good form at a mile. So Pearl Eye is another interesting one. One thing that I tend to do when I see this much green and amber on a grid, and also a number of white boxes, which means we don't know, this is the kind of race that I'd normally file under too difficult, because there are lots of horses that on form profiling figure to have a chance. Gorak is another one here, 2 from 2, finished 2nd and 3rd at the track, including from a poor draw over a mile in a more valuable race than this. Off 94, he's 96 now, so he'd be another horse that's interesting. His run style, he might very well settle just in behind these leaders and get first run. So Gorak is kind of a really interesting horse actually, and probably at his price 11-2, which gives us the idea of an each way bet, he might be the horse. Too Tempting is going to go the shortest route. If he gets a run, he's going to have a very good chance. But Gorak's form, as you can see here, he was beaten a length by Too Tempting in this race. His form ties in very closely with Too Tempting's, and he's a much bigger price. So that's the 130 at Chester. Draw and pace, obviously important considerations. Do bear in mind that the biases are not as strong as they used to be. They're still favour inside and slightly unfavour outside, but the difference between those two is not nearly as stark as it used to be. And that's not just at a mile, it's at trips, certainly 6 furlongs up to a mile. It's a more even playing field. Particularly on softer ground, it should be said, when they tend to go too hard and come back. But it's going to be quick ground today, I think. And yeah, that's Gorak would be a sporting selection in what you can clearly see is a very competitive race. So let's move on to the next of our 3 shortlisted races, and this is Ascot. And we've got a 10-runner 4-year-old plus handicap here. It's a good race, lots of green again, and let's have a look at the draw and pace angles again. What we can see here that I think is quite interesting, I'm just going to change that to 9 to 11, quite interesting, is that we can see that held up horses have won the most. Their win percentage is notably higher than the other run styles. Their place percentage is notably higher than the other run styles, and their percentage of rivals beaten is also higher than the other run styles. So the straight 6 furlongs at Ascot with a slight uphill finish is a testing 6 furlongs. It takes a bit of getting, and if you're out on the front, it can be a long way home. This is on the last 4. I just put it on the last 3, which is my default is last 3, but I do tend to look at the others to see if anything's different recently. So, for instance, this Cody Lyon has been racing more prominently in his most recent runs to his slightly less recent runs. What I'm drawn to is this quartet here who are held up. Now, I'm kind of working on the basis that Get It and Cody Lyon are both going to go forward, and it's going to be this feels to me, it says possible lone speed here, this feels to me a bit more like an even tempo of race, and I think it's certainly possible that Get It goes forward on his own, but I feel like Cody Lyon is probably going to be up there with him, and potentially Photosynthesis as well. But so I think it feels like an even tempo race, and these guys will be closing into that speed. It probably gives all of the runners some sort of a chance, but my eye is definitely drawn to this quartet at the bottom, and they're drawn 7 to 10. We can see from the heat map colouring that that's not a massive disadvantage. So let's have a look at them on the Instant Expert. And again, if I just reverse the draw, I can put them at the top of the grid. So we've got Rohan here, who's he's got a line of red, which ostensibly would be a no, a negative. We can see he's £18 below his last winning rating. So his last winning rating was 102. Today he's off at just 84. And that's because if I just change this 2 years to all, you can see that historically he's had a much better record at Ascot. He won the Wokingham in 2021. Unbelievably, he won the Wokingham in 2022 as well. This is a 20-plus runner heritage handicap, one of the most important sprint handicaps in the entire season, and he won it back to back in 21 and 22. We can kind of ignore the 5 furlong runs, I think, which are both duck eggs. And then this back to 6 furlongs in 23, late 23 on good ground. He won again in a big field. And then more recently on softer ground, he's run very creditably and reasonably creditably late last season. So we know he handles the ground. We know 6 furlongs here is his bag. He is a hold-up horse. It's just a question of whether they go fast enough. These massive field sprints really play to his late-running style. I think it's also fair to say it's a question of whether at the age of 7 he retains the zip that he once did. But Rohan is a big favourite of mine, and He won't want from support from the saddle from Ross Orion. He's definitely an interesting horse in this race. The other ones that were interesting, Dorney Lake has had the one run here in a massive field over 5 furlongs at Royal Ascot last year in the Palace of Holyrood House Stakes. I don't think you would infer too much from that. His 6 furlong form is better. You can see he's won his last 2, including beating the reopposing Cody Lyon here. He's up a few pounds for that. He is a horse who I'd actually quite like to look at his sectional data, if I can. Where are we? Dorney Lake. He's a horse that's able to close off only even fractions here. So you can see in this Doncaster race, which was an 11 runner field, I think. Yep. He was 6 lengths back in the early part of the race. This was a straight 6, of course. And then he managed to close to win by 3/4. So he's done a lot of running to get to the front. Likewise here, he was only sort of 3 lengths off the pace here, but ended up winning by 2 1/4. So he's from 2 3/4 off the leader to 2 1/4 in the lead going away. That's a 5 length turnaround from the gates. So this horse, and these are in smallish fields, kind of commensurate with today's field size. So Dorney Lake is a horse that we can see clearly will be suited by the run of the race today. He's definitely an interesting horse. It would be remiss of me not to mention this 50-1 shot, Woolhampton, who's 5 from 8 in the frame at the track, and we can look at those 8 with 5 here, and you can see he's got some 3 wins in that grouping as well. What's noteworthy is that they were all at 5 furlongs. Clearly, Connections feel he might be worth another try up to 6 furlongs today, but his 2 runs at that longer trip so far, he's been beaten 6 lengths and 7 lengths, and that tempers enthusiasm. He's obviously a massive price, and as a very small throwaway dart, you'd be forgiven for buying a ticket, as it were. But I think Dorney Lake, in spite of this red box on the track, it looks kind of interesting. It should set up for him. He's a progressive horse, having won his last 2 races nicely. Michael Bell has just been in ridiculous form lately, as you can see from these boxes here. So he's another player. He's definitely a player here. Warm Spell was also in the mix from those high drawn hold up horses. His form's a bit harder to quantify in the context of this race. He's not running class 3 before, on the turf anyway. He's not run at the track. His 2 runs at 6 furlongs were a bit middling. Newmarket, you wouldn't want to be a hold up horse there particularly. Chester, good chance he didn't get a run there, but was beaten far enough anyway. I'm already making excuses for this horse, and if I catch myself doing that, then I think I either want a proper price or it's not a bet. So he's been lightly raced, as you can see. He's only had 3 runs since September 23. He was, as a 2-year-old, he was a very good 2-year-old. He won Newbury novice and then ran behind the excellent Dancing Gemini in the Flying Scotsman, and he's only had 3 goes since then. So if he could come back to that level of ability, and the suggestion from this most recent run is that he is potentially capable of doing that, albeit that was over 7 furlongs, then he'd definitely be in the mix as well. But there are too many ifs there for me, and I have to let him beat me, which he very well might do. So I like Rohan as an old guy, but I think it probably doesn't quite set up for him today. The one that's really interesting to me is Dorney Lake, who I think ought to run very well, actually. I hope so anyway. I'll be betting him. And finally, we have the 7:30 at Ripon. Now, I want to go back to the almanac for a second here, because I want to show you some of the good stuff that's in there. So I've made it nice and big. You can see this is the contents page. I'm going to go to Ripon here. If you just click on the page number, but actually you can click on the name as well. It's going to take you to Ripon, page 99. And there's some stuff here about the track. It's a right-handed undulating oval. There's a course map here, and you can see that 6 furlong starts at the top of the straight here. You can see it's kind of bumpy. And actually, Ripon is really quite ridgy, as I say here. So let's have a look at this. 5 and 6 furlong handicaps. Ripon's track has ridges in the turf, which can make it hard for horses to change their rhythm or tempo. As such, it tends to favour those on or close to the speed. There does seem to be a slight edge to wider drawn horses, perhaps suggesting the ridges are most pronounced towards the far rail. Now that last bit's conjecture on my part, but what is unarguable is that it's difficult to win from a held up position, and it's good to be on or close to the speed. You can see this sort of gradual fading of colour as we get. There's kind of a triangle here, which you can, the best green is on the front here, but after that, the next best green is along the high numbers to midfield and up through midfield and prominent. Middle draw and prominent run style. So that seems to be the half of the track to be in early in the race. So let's see how that transposes to the actual race field. We'll have a look at the draw here. The pace tab here. Okay, so we've got good ground. It's a 10 runner race. I'm going to change this to 9 to 11. Put that on 3, and we can see that we were kind of thinking that we wanted to be this half, which makes life difficult because you've got a few that are right on the line. You'd be against Beyond Borders probably, and potentially Mark's Choice, just on the ostensible how we think the race will be run. The last two, we can see these 3 are putting themselves on the front rank. I think the horse that is an obvious one to look at, well actually all 3 of these are, but Fortemore particularly is a guy who I think should get the run of the race, let's say, should be favoured by track position and run style. Excuse me. And you can see, if we look at this, that he's a line of green on the place, which is obviously a strong positive. He's a pound different from his latest winning mark. He's got oodles of 6 furlong Ripon form. He's clearly the proverbial standing dish. And if we look at the most recent runs, on 17th of April, he was 3rd, beating a length and a quarter. Bit short of room towards the finish, wouldn't have necessarily won, but he was 11 to 1 there, and so wasn't really expected to win. On 6 furlongs here on good ground, similar field size, slightly smaller field size, he won. 6 furlongs here, a bigger field, might not have suited quite so well. Soft ground here, still ran well. He's very consistent at the track, and he's another one that, just on a quick cursory glance has to be thereabouts. The other 2 that looked well suited by the pace, True Promise, he's got a line of red, but a lot of these are ones, so that's kind of inconclusive. He's only had 1 try in Class 4 on the turf handicap, 1 try at the track, 1 try at the trip. And we can actually see that all of those things were the same race. So this 6 furlong Class 4 handicap on good ground. And that was a bigger field again. So, for a horse that wants to race prominently, that might have been a disadvantage that day. So I definitely wouldn't be discounting him without a bit more consideration. The other horse, just on run style, was Rebel Empire. Let's have a quick look at him. And he's a horse that we don't know a lot about in the context of today's race conditions. We can see that over 6 furlongs he was third in a lower grade race. He's that was off 70, he's off 82 today. Yeah, I mean, I just, the conditions are so different. He's got top weight, so he's obviously performed well in the interim. We can see he's won a couple of times on the all-weather, so his turf mark has gone up as a result of winning on the all-weather. He was fairly well beaten at Ascot, albeit over 5 furlongs. He's probably not for me. I mean, Fortamore is so much more. He's a very obvious each way bet in the race, given his track form. So this video has been longer than I wanted it to be. I just wanted to showcase a few things, how I sort of used the almanac and then come and use those same policies, essentially instant expert, draw and run style, and then build in a few extra bits to form an opinion on a race. I do use the trends quite a bit now. And I think this is quite helpful, particularly on the bigger races, rather than a fairly run-of-the-mill 6 furlong handicap at Ripon. Wouldn't necessarily be that instructive, but maybe for that Chester handicap big field, it's kind of more interesting there. So there's a lot to go at. Obviously, you can look at the odds and see the trajectory of horses. So Fortamore here, we can look at. I'm just going to have to make this a bit smaller. We can see that he opened up fairly short, 5-1, drifted out, and he's now coming back in again. Just put that on average price, and you can see that he went out to an average of about 11-2, and then now he's coming back in to a shorter price again, and that makes perfect sense to me. You can see that he's been very well bet at the time of recording, and as I say, he's a very obvious each way bet in the race. Not quite an each way bet to nothing, because such a thing doesn't exist, but he should be thereabouts, as should Dorney Lake, and more speculatively Gorak. So let's see how they go. All right, this is Matt Bisogno saying thank you very much for watching. Actually, before I say goodbye, I should remind you that the almanac is only available for a couple more days, and it's available to anybody who takes out a trial or is already a subscriber. You'll find it on your My GG's page. Let me evidence that now, so you'll see it right there. There's a great big button at the top, and you can download it from that link. It's only available until the end of this weekend, basically, and then I'm going to close the doors on that, take the link down. So if you want it, grab it now. The gold trial is available to anybody at this time, so if you trialed it before, no problem, come back and see what we've got new. We've got Betfair data and quite a few other things that we've added fairly recently, so there are reasons to come back and have a play around. And it's the weekend racing, and I've showed you how to cut down from a huge number of races to a much more manageable number. So there's lots to go at. We love our racing, we have a lot of fun with it, we know more than most people know about their bets, and that's really the thing here, is knowing more about the races in less time because of the facilitation and the colour coding and all of that good stuff. So now it is time for me to say, this is Matt Bisogno saying thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now.